Well, welcome to my channel Mispronounced Adventures. My name's Alex and welcome to my 4x4 MAN TGE overland campervan build series to replace my much loved Ford Transit, which I've taken to the Arctic for the last 4 winters. One of the major changes between the MAN TGE and the Ford Transit Mark 8 is the height. The Transit is 10 centimetres taller inside. The four-wheel drive version of the MAN is, well, it's a bit of an issue for me at 6'2". Even more at the back where it slopes. In the intro video for the series, I mentioned I was going to get a roof pod installed.
There's a couple companies which do roof pods to make the roof higher.
Whilst I've got the van stripped out, the roof pod, which I'm going to get installed, has now been booked. A bit like a roof flare, where you see lots of vans, they have cut the side panels out, and you have more space that way. I found a company which does it this way. So this video is about me paying someone to cut the roof of my van off to put an extension pod on. Now, there aren't many done at all, really, on the medium wheelbase version of this van, so this is going to be a pretty unique modification to my van. But hopefully it gives taller people who might be buying one of these vans the idea that there are some possibilities to get a roof extension put on. This is going to be a bit of a build video slash travel video. So it's probably the last time we see any of these crossbars, and the van's going to look very different and no going back after this. So let's get started where I need to get myself to South Wales.
Well, exciting time. Tomorrow morning, South Wales. I'm paying someone to cut the roof of the van off. I need to get there, so I've got a night drive to drive a couple of hours tonight to park up hotel on the way in Bristol, and then hopefully there for 9 AM tomorrow for 100 Sport Homes to have the van for a week to put the roof flare on it. Excited, but also it's a big change to the van. But let's get out of here. Well, all checked in for the evening. A lovely Holiday Inn. And I can just about see the front of the van. Well, whilst it is 20 past 11 and I'm going to go to bed, I'm going to go downstairs for a pint because today is the day I hit 50,000 subscribers on the channel, which I think is worthy of a drink. Right, bit of a cold morning. We're looking forward to when I get the heating sorted for the van. But engine's warming up and now it's drive to go. And I'll get there about 10 minutes before I need to, so let's get out of here. So for this roof pod, there aren't very many companies which do it. There's one in Bristol which I found, and they originally said yes. And then they had a discussion about it with their business partner and said no. There's another company which makes a pod, but I didn't necessarily like look of the other pods, and they weren't even sure if it was going to fit my style of rear brake light, the one where I've got the camera stalk on it. And then I came across 100 Sport Homes, who seems to have been doing them for years. Generally does them for his own bespoke builds. He just happened to put an ad out on one of the Facebook groups that he got some availability to do some pods. Had a lengthy phone call with him. He was actually with someone with experience who had done them on a medium wheelbase. The other companies I went to, they had never done medium wheelbase before for a pod. They'd already done a long wheelbase. Whereas he sent me some photos. I thought it looked great. We were on the phone for about an hour discussing things, and he's kept me updated the entire way through the process of him creating the pod himself, how he makes them, the additional testing and work he does to make sure that they're well put together, and then the colour matching process, because I matched the van as well, and setting the Skylight, and he let me go for a slightly different Skylight than he normally does, although it is very similar. And he did some custom work of where he normally puts the Skylights. He had to build a little additional area further back because I wanted it further back, and he happily did that for me. But overall, like, fantastic communication throughout the build-up process. We had about a 3-week between me trying to get it booked in to me arriving today to get it done. But he's going to have the van for an entire week, and then he's also going to insulate and do all the ply lining in the pods, which the other companies which offer the service don't do. And he actually came out at a similar price to the others, but had also the ply lining work and the insulation, and was sort of happy to bring me along for the process. So probably not going to get too much footage of the whole of it being cut out because it's a week and I'm not here. But he is going to give me some photos and some videos along the way to show you guys, and then I'm going to be picking it up at the end, and then I'll give you guys a proper walk through the pod and having a look, and then some of the plans I've got to do with it. Wales.
Bear left, then the destination is on your right.
Well, at least the train station isn't far away.
Arrived.
Well, there's a van bulkhead, which is usually a good sign, and a guy filming, which is probably a good sign as well. Alright, let's go out and mix hello. Hello! Oh, nice to meet you. How are you? Good.
And after a lengthy talk with Alan and looking around the workshop, seeing the moulds for the fiberglass pod and some of the vans he was working on, time to actually see the pod itself. And it's looking pretty good. Now, normally customers aren't interested in seeing how the pods are made, but Alan realised I was, so he let me have a view of the pod before it's put on and the hardware installed and before the installation process. And whilst I was at the workshop, my 70 by 50 pneumatic arc Skylight arrived as well.
Right, 2 hours later, because we've just been chatting, absolutely lovely guy. We just talked about vans, plans and stuff, so I'm going to go to the train station, which is there, and get a train.
It's midweek, I'm back in the van, I've had a haircut, and I'm just getting on with other video filming work I need to do, whilst the new van is currently away getting some serious modifications. And that would make it a modified vehicle. And for a modified vehicle, you need modified and vehicle insurance. Which brings me to this episode's partner, Sterling Insurance. Now, I've got my insurance policy for this van with Sterling Insurance, insured as a camper conversion, but they also do van life policies, motorhome policies, campervan policies, quite a few other products and policies you can look into. The main reason I'm working with Sterling and using them is they have insured me correctly as a content creator. I've changed from the expedition leader work being my main job to now content creation. And like many of my creative friends, it has been quite difficult to get vehicle insurance after you tell them you're a content creator. And Sterling have insured me fully and accepting as a content creator, which is great. Even when my partner tried to insure me on her van as a second driver, her insurance company, as soon as they asked what I did, and she told them I was a content creator, they flatly refused to insure me. So being insured correctly is pretty important to me, because if I ever had an accident, you can kind of Google my name and find out that I make videos, which, if I was down incorrectly, could invalidate my policy. Additionally, they also do bolt-on insurance policy to some more interesting places like Morocco, where I potentially want to bring the new van at some point. Consider looking at the information below to find out more information about Sterling, and hopefully we'll pick up the new van soon. Well, I wish it was soon. Getting the trains was a disaster. 2 of my 3 trains were cancelled, missed multiple connections, and it took me 4 hours longer than I intended to actually get there.
Well, it's taken an extra 4 hours, but the next stop...
Well, I eventually got there, even if I did give Alan about 4 wrong ETAs.
Right, we are here. Under Sport Homes is actually based at the station, which is just over there. Oh, there it is. There it is with the pod on. Excellent.
Well, because of the delays today, I didn't really actually get much footage of the whole handover process. And really, Alan captured more footage than I did of me arriving and me departing in the new van. But all I can say is I am very happy so far. We'll get on to later on looking at the pod. But first, a 3-hour drive to get back.
Well, we've just got back. I wasn't able to film much of picking up the van apart from a few bits. Mainly because I was running 4 hours late and I had 3 hours of driving to do to get back to then do another 2 hours of driving. So I've done the 3 hours and well, I haven't got enough time to really show you the pod. But it is dark, so I can't really show you much at the minute. Well, apart from doing that. It looks very cool. I'm very happy. I haven't even had a proper look at it myself yet, just because I have just had to drive. I've got another 2 hours of driving to do today anyway. But let's wait to daylight and give you a proper view of the pod.
Well, it's a few days later and the pod is on, and I'm currently in a Centre Parks car park as I'm away with family for a week. But I thought I would pop out and show you guys the pod. First off, it's pretty low profile from the outside, and I'm hoping to show you the inside and the outside, get a few measurements so you can get an idea of what it looks like, how big it is and what space you get for it. And it's a good job, I like it, because it's a pretty major modification and there's no real turning back. One of the first points I want to show is that when you're actually near the van, you can't actually see the pod that well. One colour match. This shot actually looks a little bit different, but that's mainly because there's more moisture on the pod because it's not metal versus that. Here are some of the photos of it in dry conditions I've got, and you can see the colour is pretty much bang on identical. All right, move to a slightly different spot so the lighting is less harsh. I'm also very happy with the colour match on it as well. Looks a little bit different in this lighting just because the pod has a bit more condensation, but from that angle, the colour's pretty much bang on. The other bit I'm really happy with the pod is sort of the aesthetics of, you can see sort of the like detailed lines they put on the pod itself match up to some of the bodywork lines, and they even same at the front. That swoops down, starts to match sort of the curve of the van later on as well. Really hard to say in this harsh light, but even the pod has some dimpled areas on the front bend, which one adds rigidity, so it's not a big panel, but again, matches sort of the aesthetics of the base van itself. And when you get close to the van, you don't actually see the pod that well. Panic, it disappears when you open the doors, it disappears because it is slightly inset. As for the back, it's flush with the back of the van, and it's reused my original reversing camera, my aftermarket reversing camera, which you get on these vans. So the reverse camera view is the same, and has a new reversing light high top on the van, so you still get your lights. The other bit to bring up there is you can see how far inset the pod is. It also leaves the original roof rack mounting points still all usable, which is great because I'm going to put a plate style roof rack on, which is just going to hide the profilers even more, especially at the back. For reference, visually similar to some of the vans I saw at the NEC show, which had pods and a plate style roof rack. Next up, dimensions. In total, it makes my van from the back of the pod to the ground, well, 2 meters 89, although that isn't necessarily very important information for you guys because my van's got a lift kit, bigger wheels than normal, 3 leaf springs in the back, and it's empty. Overall, the actual height it adds over the stock van, look, so at the very back, and do remember these vans slope down at the back, it adds about 32 centimeters of extra height externally. I've also gone for the Skylight on top, which we'll see in a minute, and that's probably adding another few centimeters of height. So the van is still under 3 meters, and will probably drop a little bit once it gets some more weight in it. As other people might be interested, external width at the bottom is 132 centimeters, and external width at the top, probably about 120. External extra length, it doesn't hang over anymore at the back. It probably ends about, well, we could probably measure that internally actually. Right, for those who want to see how it's sealed at the top, the material used is pretty much the same as you would see used on windscreens or fit in windows, and that's it there, even sculpted on the castellations. You can also see the way it sits is it sits on the outside of this high one, so there's an extra joint basically here to stop any water moisture getting in, though it's sealed. It sits on this high point. Go up here. You can see some of those front angles as well, which match down there, and you can see where it's sealed all up across there as well. And another view of that, the entire track for the roof rack is still usable. So with the additional height of this being about 30 odd centimeters, that's not much more than a max fan in its upright position. Yes, a little bit more again because I've got that Skylight on. I'm also going to be putting a roof rack on this as well, which is going to cover the plates at the side and the back, so the pod itself will be even less obvious. Next up, the inside. So one of the things you'll be able to see is this is an extra height bit. I have now a lot of extra height, but you'll be able to see these bolts come to here as well. Now, the reason those bolts come to there is I can cut out the rest of this. And here's an example from when I was at the workshop. So the bottom silver panel is my roof, and that's how much Alan's cut out. The top panel, which is the dark grey one, is the full length you can cut out, which Alan has cut out on one of his race van conversions, which cut the full amount out. I can cut my van out to the same if I want to. Is Alan, when he's fitting the pod, would rather leave more of these bars in to begin with, so that when the end user is designing their system, they can cut out as much or as little of this as they want. So at the moment, it's just cut out to an aperture of 73, so 173 centimeters from the minute where this bar is to the very back here, or about 153 from the lip on this bit of metal here to here. Now, what I can do is, you can probably notice that the bolts come all the way to here. You can cut this. You can cut this bar out, and the rest of the roof out, and which would give you to here. That's about 2 meters 30. And then if you want to go even further again, it's fallen off, but about 2 meters 55, you can cut a lot more of it out, which I probably will. The reason he mentioned leaving this in is if I'm running overhead cabinetry along here, or some sort of structure here that if you want to add extra headroom, but there's cabinetry here, you don't necessarily need to cut out the whole bar. You could just cut out sort of the middle section of the bar where your head's going to go through, and then you could leave this section of metalwork in to be some of the support for the cabinetry you're doing. Even if you're removing this additional bit of roof here, you could still lift this bar in and leave these bars in as well and take it all the way back to here. I'm probably going to, when I'm working on it, cut out, again, depending how I design the cabinetries, the middle section of this bar at least to extend my walkway, probably all the way to over here really, which will give me about 2 meters 50 of extra head height. Speaking of head height, let's have a look at that next. Turn some lights on. So the actual additional aperture, I'm going to measure from there to there, because that's where the roof cut is. That is 120 centimetres wide, so the amount they cut out is 120 centimetres wide. Most of the bars are cut off to these sort of nubs. At the very top of it, whilst it's 120 centimetres wide there, this is about 107, 108 centimetres wide. This is already insulated, so one of the things Alan does is he ply lines it and insulates it. So this has got 50mm PIR board in the roof and the sides, and there's a bunch of bonded wooden slats inside of this as well, which they're mounted off and what the roof is mounted off. So potentially you can add a little bit more if you want. So for extra height, you've got your roof and you've got your bottom of your bars. So normally when you put your line in over this, you're going to lose the depth of that bar. And these bars are about 5 centimetres. So if you go from the back here, this is new space, it's 25 centimetres, plus the height of your bars, 30 centimetres in total. So at the back of the van, I've gained about 30 centimetres of additional height. And because the back of the van's slope from this bar, which is left in, I've got 25 centimetres. So about 20 centimetres of extra actual space from the roof pod, and losing the bars another 5. So about 25 centimetres of new space at the front. And at this moment in time, and I haven't done my subfloor yet, I just got the original factory floor in. It does increase my internal height for this section too. It does increase my height for up to, just bring it up to 2 meters 10 internally at the back. And this middle section at the moment, yeah, just under 2 meters 10 as well. So for me, significantly increased the height. As you can see at the minute, there is a lot of space currently up there, which can get removed. So if I was going to move the rest of these bars all the way to the front of the pod to absolutely maximise how much space I can get, which I probably will, I'm going to get myself about an extra 82 centimetres of internal full height, which I'm pretty happy with. So one of the other important measurements is how much space is left of the original roof at the front. Because if you want to mount fans, max fan, air conditioning unit, this is obviously the area you probably would do it. I guess you could add some things onto top of the pod if you wanted to, but that's going to increase your vehicle height even more. So I wouldn't really want to cut any more past this bar. And looking at the roof, the pod ends about here, so you could, that's got about 69, 70 centimetres left that way, and then you still have the full width of the van. This bar is in the way, so if you did want to mount a 40 by 40 max fan or air conditioning unit, you would have to chop that bar, which isn't necessarily the end of the world. Again, these are only for supporting the roof here. If you were putting something like an air conditioning unit on it, I would probably chop the bar of where you wanted the air conditioning to go and then reinforce it somewhere or the other to the existing bar, because it is going to be quite weighty. A max fan on the other hand, not so much of a problem. The gap between here at the minute, if you didn't want to cut anything at all, is 30 centimetres, and if you wanted to add like a 30 by 30 and just trim some of the ends of the bar off, you could probably half trim that bar and get your 35 by 35 standard aperture cut. If you want to go any larger, you would have to move that bar as well, but I would look at somewhere or the other reinforcing it elsewhere if you did do that. So the ply lining at the minute, just take into account those bars which live at the back of the cupboards. I'm going to probably take down this wood and redo it to get a little bit more extra space out of that, and to change some of the insulation I've gone to put in the walls. One of the other options I went for is the Skylight. So this is a nomadic arc skylight, which I quite like the look of. It's a 75/50, so it's a huge skylight, and it's going to give me a lot of potential extra space. Being me, I am probably going to change the LEDs to work on the Philips Hue or the smart lighting system, so they can all be voice controlled and RGB. It's also got a fly screen and a blackout as well, which is just a nice little extra feature. So the Skylight was a bit of extra custom work I had added. You can see there's a raised section there, which is where the Skylight would normally go. He extended it back, which meant for me, I could have the Skylight at the very back. It's on that little raised section, so whilst it's obviously already sealed, there's going to be less chance of water ingress, because the water is never going to meet the ceiling, it's going to be sitting below it. Which I think is a nice little extra feature to make sure the pod doesn't leak. Normally on Alan's pods, the Skylight's in the middle, and then you can also go for a solar package which has 2 flat solar panels bonded to the roof as well. The back edge, I also had the back of the pod left uninsulated because I'm going to do some work here. He did actually provide me with the insulation because he said you paid for it, but at the minute I've just had this left raw. So you can see the inside of the pod, and you can see there's also these strengthening areas all over the pod as well. That's the reverse camera rewind. It's been removed from its original brake light. At the minute it's just sealed in here, not to keep it in position, that's just to seal the joint. There's the original bolt which holds this on, is currently going through up there. So it's sort of remounted in the exact same position. And then you can sort of see there the pod versus the roof. Now there is a gap there, but there's meant to be a gap there. When you put sealant on, you're meant to leave a bed of sealant, not squish the whole thing out so it's really thin. It's meant to have a bed. So that's why there's a gap there. But you can see all the work done to make sure you match all the castellations and contours of the van. So whilst the pod itself is bonded to the roof with the sort of windscreen bonding, it's also bolted as well, which is probably a great way to make sure during the curing process the pod bonds exactly at the height you want it to bond to. Right, important questions I could think of. Is there additional metalwork or framework needed? No. So whilst there were 3 companies which potentially did pods, although one of them I only really wanted to fit to a medium, one of them does a steel framework, and the other 2 companies, when I asked them about it, saw it's completely unnecessary. These bars are not really that structural. They are very flexible, and their main job is to support the roof, as in this panel, stop it flapping around. Adding that metal framework bolted to those little nubs isn't really going to do much rigidity, plus the strength and thickness of this pod bonded to the roof is going to add plenty of rigidity, which would have been lost by those bars. Same if you order the factory extra high fiberglass top for this model of van, and the same for the VW California with its giant fiberglass roof pod. They don't add additional bracing around the exterior, they just bolt their new fiberglass roofs directly to the van's roof rack mounting points. Now those factory versions do have fiberglass crossbars, but that is to hold the panel of the roof up, whilst this pod has the reinforced areas in the pod itself and wooden crossbars bonded to the inside. I'm not particularly worried about the loss of these bars in it. I guess one of the other things to mention, whilst this is on a medium wheelbase, normally most of the pods I came across, including Allen's, are generally done on the long wheelbase version, but they can be done on the extra long wheelbase as well. It's pretty rare for them to be done on the medium wheelbase, but which is why it's been so difficult for me to find someone to do it. And I want to hopefully make this video so people can see that medium wheelbase there are options as well to increase the roof height. Next up, can you get one of these yourself? Yes, Allen at Hunter Sports Homes wants to do more pods for the general public. They fit on the MAN TGE, the VW Crafter, and the Sprinters as well. So if you are interested in getting one of these, you can contact him. As for the price, I paid full price. I didn't try to get any sort of discount or anything like that because I have a YouTube channel. He's a one-man small business who makes these pods for vans. He's been doing them for a while. And I'm going to try and go through the prices, which they are as the minute. They could potentially change in the future. So in grand total, excluding the Skylight, I paid £2,800. That included the building of the pod, colour match, fitting of the pod, the insulation and the ply lining. The insulation and ply lining is a service which the other 2 pod creators didn't offer, and they were the same or slightly more expensive anyway. And I thought that would be a far better option. Even if I take some parts of it down to modify it, the fact that it's already templated and the framework is built, it just makes my life a lot easier. So I paid £2,800. I also went for the Nomadic Arc Skylight, which is a 700 by 500 Skylight. He also does another model of Skylight as well, which is again the exact same size and almost identical model. I paid an additional £400 for the Skylight, which, looking at the RRP of that Skylight, plus someone to professionally fit it, that's actually very reasonable. So if you are interested in having one of these made up for your van, I want an extremely thorough and personal experience of getting it done, if you do contact Alan at Hunter Sport Homes, and all the information will be in the description below, do mention my name and that you saw the pod and are interested in getting one done and finding out more because you saw it on my channel. It's a great way for me and him to track the performance of the video and get his pods a little bit more used. I've seen 1 or 2 of these pods in public before driving on motorways, but I've never seen one on a medium wheelbase. He's only ever done one before, so a medium wheelbase with an extra pod is a pretty rare and extreme modification, but I couldn't be more happy, as it's going to allow me to do my up and down lowering bed design that I wanted, and gives me all this extra head height in the area which doesn't have the bed in. And that's pretty much going to be it for this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've seen something you've probably not seen before. If you like this sort of content, consider checking out the rest of the MAN TGE campervan build. If you really like the content, consider joining the memberships. Or some of the other videos are where I take my vans. Additionally, I'm a brand ambassador for Autoterm, who make diesel air heaters and hot water heaters, which I'm using in this van. I work for Roma, which is the UK lithium battery company, where I design electrical systems for customers, and so many more links in the description below. But really, I just want to make content for you guys to enjoy. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Cheers. Bye.